Hey Summoners, how's the new season so far? My name is Nathan Ing and I'll be your host for the patch 12.5 rundown. Today we're going to be covering the changes and also provide you guys with the updated tier list for all 5 roles to give you an idea of what's good and what's not too strong in each role this patch. Make sure to subscribe because we'll be creating a ton of content covering season 12 and you definitely don't want to miss out. Without further ado, let's begin the patch rundown. Before we get into the actual balance changes, let's look at one thing that everybody can agree Riot does well, the skins. These upcoming B skins look absolutely adorable as always. So if you play Heimerdinger, Nunu, Ziggs, or Orianna, be ready to swipe that credit card when these bad boys come out. I personally really like the B skin line a lot and love all these new skins, but to me, the Orianna one stands out above the rest. The bee piloting the ball in the splash art is just way too cute. How about you? Let us know which one you're most excited about down in the comments below. Now for the system changes. Well, this patch, it's a singular change. Hullbreaker has been a really solid item since its release, but lately it's been a little bit too heavily built. It makes perfect sense to see the item on traditional split pushers like Sion, Nasus, or Jax, but the issue lately is that ranged top laners like Uxin and Graves are rushing it too. They get so much value out of those resists that they can go ahead and just face tank their lane opponent and win extended fights that they should have no business taking in the first place. Eventually, they get out of hand and completely take over the game with just a single side lane. This super one-dimensional playstyle with little to no counterplay that just completely overpowers the other laner doesn't really take any skill. Obviously, this isn't healthy for the game, so we're seeing a nerf to Hullbreaker specifically for ranged champions. The resistances are being halved from 20 to 60 based on level, down to 10 to 30 when built on a ranged champion. On top of that, the minion resists are also halved, going from 60 to 180 down to 30 to 90. This probably won't completely kill the item on ranged top laners. It still gives them 20% extra damage in towers after all. But it should help curb how OP the item is and prevent ranged champions from just stat checking everybody that they play against. My guess is that you'll have to pick it up later in your build, probably as your 3rd or 4th item. Alrighty, that covers the system changes, so let's talk about how those changes as well as the balance changes for the champions themselves will affect our tier list. First off, we'll start with the top laners. Tryndamere has been considered one of the best picks in both solo lanes and high elo for months, and lately the rest of the solo queue is catching up, so he's moving up to the OP tier. He's just an overwhelming force, being strong at all stages of the game. A common misconception is that Tryndamere is somehow countered by hard CC, but it's really not that simple. Yes, he's prone to CC in 5v5s, but the thing is, you shouldn't even really be playing him in a 5v5 anyway. Tryndamere is best planted in his side lane, where he can quickly shove waves and chop down turrets in seconds. The only time that you should ever think about grouping is if the enemy team doesn't have a ton of peel, and you have both Flash and Ghost up, ensuring that you can get onto a target and stick to them. Cass gets a promotion to the S tier due to how well she's performing lately. Bruisers have been given some better anti-magic items, causing mages as a whole to become weaker in the top lane. But Cassiopeia isn't affected by those changes for some reason, and that's because her damage is all about sustained DPS and not burst. She's perfectly fine with longer extended trades. Itemization aside, her kit hard counters most top laners that you'll deal with. As long as you can land your Qs, you can kite anybody to death. Even super mobile top laners are stuck without much to do, since Miasma's ground effects prevents them from actually going in for trades. Camille gets knocked down a peg from the OP tier down to the S tier. Bear in mind, being in the S tier means that she's still really good and can easily carry most games. But our OP tier is getting a little bit overcrowded, so we had to choose somebody to knock down out of it, and she's just not quite at the same level as the other champions in it. Irelia moves down to the A tier from the S. She's still pretty solid and can definitely carry some games pretty hard, but even in some of the best matchups, she just doesn't really have that 1v9 potential that you can expect from an S tier champion. The main issue for Irelia at the moment is that there isn't really a super OP build for her right now. She was most broken when either Gore Drinker or Shield Build were OP mythic choices for bruisers. While they're still good, they aren't so insanely overtuned that they automatically become insta wins when you purchase them. Volibear moves up to the A tier. He was previously in the B tier, since even if you had a good matchup, he seemed pretty lackluster with the lead. But now he's in a good spot where he actually has a pretty good impact on most games. The main reason for this is partially due to the Hullbreaker craze that everyone's going through. Volibear has always had a pretty solid laning phase and could bully somebody in a side lane fairly well, so Hullbreaker makes perfect sense on him. In fact, it's kind of weird that it wasn't really meta on him earlier. Zac jumps up 2 whole tiers, landing in the A tier, and honestly you could even make an argument and put him in the S tier. He's had some really solid laning against champions of all classes, provides a ton of damage and disruption in fights. He can build flexibly, and is honestly playable with and against team comps of all kinds. Olaf is just absolutely awful in both the top and jungle, so he falls to our lowest tier. We actually thought the bruiser item changes could go one or two ways for Olaf. Either the more offensive-oriented items would make him more snowbally and carry even harder, or the lower durability would make him even more useless, even with the lead. Well, since he's in the C tier, obviously the latter became true. He's in serious need of a mini rework or overhaul in my opinion. The only way that Olaf is going to be viable otherwise is with massive buffs. All that will do is make him oppressively overpowered with how good bruiser items are. Now for the jungle, here's our list. Zac moves up to the OP tier. He's just performing too well to belong anywhere else at the moment. He's by far the best tank in the jungle right now, and is equal footing with almost even the most OP bruisers and assassins. That's because Zac doesn't have hard limiters that most other tanks do in the jungle. Most champions in the class have a slow startup, with low damage and almost no pre-6 gank pressure. Even after they get their ultimates, they're gated by long cooldowns to be useful in fights. But Zac has good damage, and his slingshot gives him some of the highest pressure in the game of any jungler, at least once he gets some more points into it. Once you reach level 9 and max it out, you can gank any lane from any angle. This becomes impossible to deal with for immobile champions that don't have some sort of displacement to cancel your jump. In fights, he's especially oppressive for squishy backliners. While most people like building Frostfire Gauntlet and purely tanky items, I personally like going Sunfire and Demonic Embrace. They're still tanky, but do a lot of damage and completely melt whatever they're sticking onto. While Xin Zhao has started falling off a little bit in the past couple of months, the recent bruiser item changes give him some more snowball potential, so he can transition his OP early game into stronger mid game carry. As a result, he gets bumped up to the S tier. I know he's being nerfed on this patch, but since the nerf doesn't really hit his damage nor early ganks, I think that he's going to be just fine. Lilia drops down to the A tier, and honestly, it was hard not to put her in the B tier. She's never an awful pick, but she also doesn't provide anything special deserving of the S tier. The one time that she really shines is against beefy, low damage teams, where you can almost be a sort of drain tank with her passive. Outside of that, she's just an average magic damage dealer. Just like Lilia, Lee Sin drops to the A tier, bordering on the B tier. If you're super aggressive and mechanically gifted, you can stomp games pretty hard with him, but he just doesn't do it nearly as consistently as a lot of other champions do. Once you get past 20 or 25 minutes, he falls off pretty hard, and instead of being the main carry, his main usefulness is just peeling with his ultimate. Olaf somehow wasn't on our jungle tier list, so now we're adding him. Like we just got done saying in the top lane section, he's pretty darn awful, so he lands in the C tier. Even in the best situations, he's pretty much always a suboptimal pick. Other champs fill the role of early game bully in the jungle without falling off and becoming completely useless past the 15-minute marker. Now here's our mid lane tier list. Diana moves up to the OP tier. Being one of the best junglers in the game isn't just good enough for her. She's also an incredibly dominant mid lane pick, doing well into all champions of all classes. The main draw that she has for me is how easily she's able to stop other assassins. She can easily match their bursts and trades, but have better extended trading, and have double dash to stick to them and get in those extra hits. I'd say that she's second only to Ahri in terms of carrying power and consistency at the moment. With no real nerfs in sight, you should really consider picking her up. Pyke is another assassin that's been doing super well in mid lately, so he's also getting moved up to the OP tier. Try as they may to push him out of the mid lane and down to the support, Bright just can't really keep him from coming back again and again. But the thing is, they're pretty much out of options for nerfing him as a mid laner. Nothing in his kit makes him good as a solo laner, it's just his kill threat is so high, with hitting his hook basically guaranteeing a kill on your opponent. The only way to nerf Pyke mid is to gut his damage, but that's gonna kill support Pyke in the process. Maybe they could have a creative change, but I don't know what that would be, or what that will look like. We know that Veigar would still be pretty good after his last round of nerfs, but he's doing even better than we thought, so he gets bumped up into the S tier. He's pickable in all situations, with very few counters being really that hard to deal with. Worst case scenario, you could build Crown and Zhonya's and survive even scary champions like Fizz or Zed. Yone and Yasuo both get dropped down to the A tier. They've sort of been kinda mediocre, and we probably should have moved them from the OB tier before now. Anyway, they're still really strong scaling picks, and if you're good with them, you'll definitely be able to hard carry once you reach 2 or 3 items. But just being a hyper carry isn't good enough. They lack enough early game presence to be considered any higher than this tier at the moment. Now let's move things down to the bottom lane. As with mid lane, bot lane Veigar is also getting a promotion, except down here he's moving all the way up to the OP tier. Again, the nerf just really isn't putting a dent on him. He still wins most lanes, or at worst goes neutral and then outscales. On top of providing insane bursts of damage with his low cooldown Q and W combo, he also has his baby cage, which is one of the most broken basic abilities in the game in my opinion. It just gives so much zone control, especially when you fight in the jungle. With another round of buffs coming her way, Samira moves up to the S tier. Her win rate probably isn't going to reflect how OP she really is, but that's just been the case for Samira. When she was first launched, she was one of the most broken champions that League has ever seen, but her high skill floor meant that bad players tanked her stats a lot. In the right hand, she's pretty good at 1v9ing. To finish things off, we have our supports. Seraphine is getting a pretty thick list of buffs this patch, with the goal of shifting her towards actually being a good support again, instead of only being viable when played as a bot lane carry or mid laner. Almost all of the changes are directed at her W, with the most significant of these changes being that the shield value now scales with how many points you put in the ability rather than Seraphine's level. This is pretty huge. Supports are pretty low level compared to everybody else, often being as low as level 12 or 13 when solo laners reach 18. As a result, you would end up with their main utility spell only being about 2/3 of its full strength when everybody else was reaching their endgame. I'm personally glad that Riot is trying to revive Seraphine's support, and I think this change will either do that or at least push her in the right direction. Alrighty, that concludes our patch 12.5 rundown. If you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, feel free to share your thoughts with me in the comments down below. Also, check out the link in the description to join our Discord. Good luck this season, Summoners. I'm hoping the best for all of you, not just in the game, but in real life as well. Hope you guys are killing it. Anyway, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.